Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where during the previous 24 hours the Russians attacked the city of Kyiv using hundreds of air vehicles. According to different sources, the Russians used up to 200 strike drones, and many of them jet-powered, up to 20 ballistic missiles, up to 8 Zircon hypersonic cruise missiles, and up to 50 Ha-101 cruise missiles, and up to 8 Kalibr cruise missiles. During the night, we received lots of updates. The Russians basically started their massive attack somewhere around at 11 p.m. of the 19th of August of 2026, and the Russians ended attacking the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv, somewhere around at 8 a.m. So the massive attack lasted more than 7 hours, and once again, lots of explosions, lots of damages were recorded. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine reported that the Russians used just 186 air vehicles to attack the territory of Ukraine, and it seems that the official Ukrainian authorities lowered the number because, according to different independent sources, the Russians used much more missiles and drones during the overnight attack. So let's discuss everything in detail. Once again, let's take a look at this map. Lots of arrows, lots of lines, lots of roads of attacks, lots of fire icons, and let's discuss everything in details, and let's see how exactly the massive attack was developing through the night. First, as we discussed, as I told you, the massive attack started around at 11 p.m. of the 19th of August of 2026, and the Russian massive attack started with Iskander strikes on the city of Kyiv. The Iskander strikes began at 11:50, as you can see according to this article. The Russians were using, as we discussed, dozens of Iskander missiles. The Russians were attacking the capital of Ukraine from the northeast. The Russians were attacking the capital of Ukraine from the east, and according to information we have, the Russians were attacking the capital of Ukraine also from the southeast. The Russians, during the first stage of the massive attack, were using Iskander missiles and Zircon hypersonic missiles, and we are talking about orange and blue lines, as you can see. And when the Russians ended attacking the territory of Ukraine with these missiles, we start receiving first updates about fire anomalies. According to different sources, the fire anomalies were recorded through the western parts of the capital of Ukraine. Large fire breakouts in western Kyiv industrial zone after Russian missile strikes. NASA firms data indicates that multiple large fires broke out at an industrial zone in the western Kyiv following several Russian Iskander M ballistic and or Zircon cruise missile strikes. So these are the fire anomalies that were recorded, and as you can see, the Russians with ballistic missiles were attacking mainly industrial facilities and industrial zones, mainly through the western parts of Ukraine. When we zoom in, we'll see lots of facilities, buildings, lots of vehicles, lots of warehouses, ammo depots in this area, or just facilities that the Ukrainians were using for military purposes. And the first stage of the massive attack ended at around 1 a.m. of the 20th of August of 2026, and when the first stage ended, and the first stage included just Iskander and Zircon missiles, the Russians began attacking the territory of Ukraine using Kalibr missiles. So let's take a look at this map. When talking about the Kalibr missiles, we're talking about these green lines. And somewhere at 1 a.m. of the 20th of August of 2026, pro-Russian sources published this video, and here we have the moment when the Russian military ships were attacking the territory of Ukraine using Kalibr missiles, and here we can see how the Kalibr missiles were flying over the sky in the area of the city by the name of Novorossiysk. The Russians used up to 8 Kalibr missiles, and the Kalibr missiles were flying from the settlement of Novorossiysk in the northwestern direction. Somewhere in the central part of Ukraine, the Kalibr missiles began maneuvering, trying probably to outsmart the Ukraine's air defense positions, and then the Kalibr missiles continued moving further in the northern direction. And according to different sources, somewhere at at 35 past 1 a.m., we start receiving reports about Kalibr strikes in Kyiv. The thing is that the Russians launched up to 8 Kalibr missiles, but the sources reported that just 1 or 2 of them managed to reach the city. As a result of attack, a few more fire anomalies were recorded through the settlement, and this time fire anomalies were recorded through the eastern parts of the settlement. And after the Russians ended with Kalibr strike, a small operational pause appeared. The sources reported that only at almost at 2 a.m., so after 30 minutes of pause, the Russians began their launching maneuvers using 295 MS strategic aircrafts. Somewhere at 2 a.m., the Russians began launching cruise missiles of Ha-101 type, once again also with the purpose to attack the city of Kyiv. But this time the Russians changed their tactics using Ha-101 missiles, because during the previous massive attacks, the Ha-101 missiles usually entered the territory of Ukraine between the cities of Sumy and Kharkiv, and then the Russian Ha-101 missiles were moving in the direction of the city of Kremenchuk. Then the Russian Ha-101 missiles usually crossed the river of Dnieper, advanced further in the western direction. Then there was the something like a maneuver with the purpose to outflank the air defense forces of Ukraine, and then the Ha-101 missiles began attacking in the northern direction. So this is the roads of attack that the Russians usually used during the previous massive attacks. But this time the Russians changed their tactics, because according to different sources, the Russian Ha-101 missiles were entering the territory of Ukraine between Lugansk and Kharkiv regions. And furthermore, probably for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, the Russian Ha-101 missiles didn't cross the river of Dnieper. They were moving along the river of Dnieper, along its eastern bank, and the sources reported that many Ha-101 missiles managed to reach the city of Kyiv, and somewhere at first Ha-101 missiles entered the airspace of Ukraine almost at 4 a.m. And then first explosions were recorded somewhere around at 5:30. So as you can see, almost 2 hours the Ha-101 missiles were flying over the territory of Ukraine, and somewhere at 5:30 first explosions were recorded through the city of Kyiv. The Minister of Defense of Ukraine reported that they managed to intercept 31 cruise missiles of Ha-101 type, and the pro-Ukraine authorities claimed that they managed to intercept and destroy every single missile of this type. But when talking about independent sources, the Ukrainians haven't managed to bring down even a 50% of this type of weapon, and the sources reported that lots of explosions were recorded also through the city of Kyiv and its agglomeration. Let's discuss the results of attack. During this morning, we received lots of updates on this matter, and we were receiving updates and videos mainly from two cities: the city of Brovary, which is located to the east of the city of Kyiv, and the city of Boryspil, which is located to the southeast of the settlement. So let's discuss videos in details, and in this video, for example, we can see first strikes with Iskander missile. Most likely these strikes took place through the western parts of the city of Kyiv. This is the moment when a ballistic missile attacked some facility on the territory of the city of Kyiv. Here we have the settlement of Brovary. This is already almost the morning. A massive fire broke out in Brovary, a city near Kyiv, following today's missile drone strike by the Russian armed forces. Some facility most likely was badly damaged. Later we received the report that a fire anomaly was recorded through this territory. Here we have a fire anomaly. Fire erupted at Brovary oil depot and warehouse after Russian missile strike. So we have an oil depot, this one, and here we have this facility. I would like to remind you that during the previous days, probably during the previous 3 days, the Russians attacked this territory 2 or 3 times. We are talking about the city of Brovary, and as a result of those attacks, the Russians managed to destroy at least 2 or 3 warehouses through this territory. And if you remember, almost 3 days ago, the Russians first destroyed destroyed this facility, and 2 days ago the Russians destroyed this facility. Now we see that during the overnight attack the Russians destroyed this oil depot most likely and this building. So we will add this black area in this area as well, because most likely this territory was completely wiped out by Russians as a result of the overnight attack. Most likely the Russians haven't ended with the city of Brovary. Most likely the Russians will continue attacking the territory. This video was published this morning, and here we can see the consequences of attack. And one thing is clear, that something big was destroyed. A warehouse was destroyed, or an ammo depot was destroyed, or some logistic facility was destroyed with a lot of products. And later we start receiving also a video from the city of Boryspil. Here we have the video of this morning. We can see that the sky was covered with a big flame, with a big smoke, which means that something big was destroyed, most likely some facility through the northern parts of the settlement. Here we have also oil depot, oil bases. Here we have also lots of warehouses, lots of facilities that the Ukrainians could use for logistic purposes or even for military purposes. Here we have the settlement of Boryspil, but from another angle we can see lots of emergency services. We can see police officers trying to block some blocks of the settlement of Boryspil, so not to allow civilians to enter these territories and to make videos. Here we have a very big fire that was broke out right after the Russians attacked the territory. So once again, the Russians during the overnight attack managed to deal significant damage to the armed forces of Ukraine, to the Ukraine's economy and infrastructure. And I would like to remind you that just yesterday the Ukrainians published a report asking additional air defense systems, but most likely the Western countries don't have enough of interceptors, so that is why the city of Kyiv was completely unprotected. And I would like to point to attention that this is only the 20th of August of 2026. It is very difficult to imagine how the things are going to develop during the winter period of time. More facilities, more warehouses would be destroyed and wiped out by Russians, and very likely that the Ukrainian authorities during the winter period of time, due to complete absence of any defense, air defense, would be forced to announce evacuation, probably even of very big parts of the eastern parts of Ukraine, especially and like cities like Sumy and Kharkiv. Anyway, let's continue. So when talking about this massive attack, we have covered strikes with missiles once again. Iskander missiles, Zircon missiles, Ha-101 missiles. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine also reported that the Russians used Banderol missiles, and the most important thing, that the Russians were also using jet-powered drones. As for jet-powered drones, we haven't received reports, almost nothing about, let's say, the targets that jet-powered drone attacked or something like this. But as you can see, according to this map, according to this picture, the Russians used hundreds of jet-powered drones. The sources reported that up to 200 strike drones the Russians used, and many of them were jet-powered. And this is another, let's say, record from the Russian side. And if the Russians are able to replace the drones of the first, second, and third generation with fourth and fifth generations with jet-powered drones, this means that the situation for Ukraine will only worsen and will continue deteriorating. And the most important thing is that the Russians right now attack only the central and the eastern parts of Ukraine, and sooner or later the Russians would be forced to shift their focus further in the western direction. And sooner or later, and I believe that this year most likely during the last part of this year, the Russians would shift their focus to the western parts of Ukraine, because there are also lots of facilities, lots of warehouses that the Russians are interested in destroying them. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours we received lots of updates. More precisely, this morning we received lots of updates. We haven't adjusted the map. We will just a few words about updates that were published by the Ministry of Defense, and during the next video we will cover these changes in details. First of all, the pro-Russian sources published a video with Russians in the area of the settlement of Mykilske. The units of the Group of Forces South published a video where we can see how the battle for the settlement of Nikolaipolye were taking place, and we have at least 3 episodes with 3 Russian flags through the settlement. Based on this video and based on the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation that have already been published, we will adjust the map. We will color almost the entire pocket to the south of the settlement of Drushkovka. Another important territory is the settlement to the south of the village of Dobropillia. This morning, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation also confirmed and reported control over the settlement of Mytyashevo. So during the previous 2 days, the Russians reported about control over the settlements of Vodyanska and Krasnodopolye. So these are the changes between the 17th and the 19th of August of 2026. And today we received the report about control over Mytyashevo. So we will adjust the map and we will discuss these adjustments during the upcoming, during the evening video in more details. And that's it for the short video. The military summary channel remains to weaken the many violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye-bye.